of the 1980s, it is not a progression from the leadership of the black radical movement of the 1970s. It is not. It is a completely new animal. The labor movement as well. They're a completely new animal, and they are defining and setting the agenda, of what the liberation struggle is going to be for the next 15 years, from 80 to 95. And that is where we are today.
Would you then say that era, I think around the 80s when the UDF started coming up, when the labor movement and the unions started coming up, was it a way of the state, the controlling state, trying to water down the struggle?
Not the struggle. You are right. Not the struggle. The black radical understanding of the struggle. That was the issue. The issue in white society in 1980 was not the Roy Gefar. White society was not bothered about the Roy Gefar or the Red Menace. White society was particularly concerned about the Swart Gefar, and you had to contain the Swart Gefar. And one way of doing so was to reinvent what that struggle was about. When you go into the labor setup, how do you define the antagonisms? Neville Alexander was struggling to explain to hostel inmates in 1986. We gave him a floor and said, talk to these people. He was trying to explain what the enemy Now you have to make that transition. People had to make the transition from seeing the enemy of the people as white to seeing the enemy of the people as employer.
Frankly, he couldn't have made an argument. He could only go as far as making an assertion. He couldn't conceivably persuade that audience.
Exactly.
So
is that because people are now saying one of the people who sold out were internal liberals within the African struggle? So they were saying the UDMs were, for example, the liberals.
UDF.
Liberals, UDF, yes. Were they liberals? Were they watered down?
I've just explained that the initiative, in fact, in the white left circles today, you have a cohort of people that we refer to as the new radicals. They refer to themselves as the new radicals. The liberals are what Biko responded to, and he dealt a death blow on white liberalism in South Africa. Ikinusas, he dealt with it. But what did Nusas do? After Biko dealt with them, they reinvented themselves into the radicals, and they actually have a book out called The New Radicals by Glenn Moss. Now, he sees himself as one of the new radicals. What is this new radicalism? It is the new radicalism of the 80s that says South Africa is racial capitalism, and therefore what we are fighting here is a capitalist dispensation. And that's academic, but you had to translate that academic understanding of the struggle into popular struggles in the streets. How do you do that? You have to then, in that complex understanding of capitalism, you have to lift out the state and make the state an enemy. But you want to have the state to have a face in the township. What does that face become? The councillor. So we killed the councillor in Sebokeng in 1984. We brutally murdered, Zameni, because he's a representation of the state. Now, how ridiculous can that be?
I want you to do this. And name this new people. Like, for example, people are saying Pravin Gordhan was one of those. Yes, I want you to name them because it's very difficult for us who were not old enough in the 80s.
What we will have to concede to, and this is being frank about it, what we will have to concede to is that within the leadership of the mass movement of the 1970s, there are those that went to to Robben Island. There are those who were not arrested, who were not killed. They come back in the 1980s, and what do? They actually join the paradigm shift. And let's mention them. Matthew Morobe is one of these people. He actually becomes involved in the UDF. Terem Siwalikota is actually one of them. Eric Mulobi is one of them. In fact, there's a new biography.
Because it helps us.
There's a biography out on Eric Mulobi, and it actually shows the transition. Frank Chikani is one of these people. These are people who made that shift. Away from.
How do they say? They matured.
They matured, and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma says
this is their own self-justification.
She matured into the ANC. That's what Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma says. We have to concede that there are leaders who actually did that.
TLC never matured into the ANC.
TLC never did. Khoto Siyakhulu never did. TLC will, but Sechaba Muntisi did. And Sechaba Muntisi, it gets to be worse. Can we finish it quickly? This is what Sechaba Muntisi does. In 1977, he becomes president of the SSRC. What does he do? He invites NUSAS back into the SSRC. They have a meeting here in Diepkloof.
Reversing
Biko's thing about dealing with NUSAS. And what happens in that meeting? They are all arrested. They are all captured in that meeting. For the first time when they are with NUSAS since Biko, they are captured by the security police and they are taken into custody. Among the members of NUSAS who were in that cohort that was captured on that day, they included Max Price, the former Vice Chancellor of Wits. Vice Chancellor at UCT, but he was Dean of Health Sciences at Wits. Max Price was in that group that was arrested here in Diepkloof. And what happens, they were arrested around 10 in the morning. By 2 o'clock, Max Price's parents and the parents of the white students were dragging them out of John Foster Square. Sechaba Muntisi and the rest of them remained, from 1977 Easter weekend, they went on trial in 1981. They stayed in prison for 5 years. That was meant to end the SSRC, and that was in 1977. But fortunately, Reformer Solo emerged, and the SSRC once again gained momentum. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No. I think.
Don't go back. It's all.
Yeah. No, I think if we are to accept that there was no armed struggle and all of that, I think we tend to then, remove black agency in many ways, because then it means the heroes of the story are always dying. Those who are revolutionaries that are always dying. Then we are then accepting the might of the hegemonic state that at any given point then it is able to shut down, whether it's through traitors of our brothers or whoever. Then we are saying there's a state that was so powerful that it was able to neutralize even the most radicalist of blacks, because even amakabasa existing, for instance, it wasn't just Njewuti Bama comrade pair. There were also problematic issues of communities feeling victimized and terrorized by some of these groups, and they changed into something else. So I'm saying there are complexities for me in how we understand the liberation struggle, and then I can't fully then accept that these people are just posers. Yes, we have posers, but we can't then rationalize everything down to, then as black people, what have we achieved? Even the so-called constitution of freedom, which I agree with you, is not what we're supposed to be getting. It's not freedom. But then, it's just been given. So even Namanje, we are still finding ourselves in a lull then, where the new state is still able to shut down our Ike and everyone else who's trying to to not just exist in these relations of capital that we are in, but to restart the state.
We have one way of responding. One line. You know how we say what you've just described is a period where black was absent even when they were present, and white was present even when they were absent. So what you see as black agency is precisely that.
Choreographed.
Let's be frank about it. In exile, I often say, Tambo was absent even when he was present, and Joslovo was present even when he was absent.
Right.
Now for me, I would say this. It's quite interesting that in your discussions you omit Inkat. I call them Inkat. I don't call them Inkat has never fought for freedom.
No. I didn't say they fought for freedom. I said there are family members who were part of these organizations. I was trapped in my training. I take my Inkat.
Yeah, it was freedom.
Yeah.
Actually, in KZN.
That I agree with.
Yeah, so it was, self-governing.
I don't dispute that.
I don't even listen to
that. That's not
because when
disputed.
I listen to Cozy FM, and most people, they fought me when they say, I'm no longer Zulu. So if I was Zulu before, then I'm no longer Zulu because I don't even understand this thing. Inkatha was just,
no, for sure. Big problem.
The one thing about
the
one thing about the IFP, again, the 1980s become interesting. 1983, most people don't know about this, the Ngoye massacre. Do we understand what the Ngoye massacre was? Do you know about it?
I know.
Yes, I actually got the Ngoye massacre from that John Mashala, who explained he was there at Ngoye when it happened. Yeah, but if you and I know we're going to have a sit down, I just want Ike to close so fair chances he wants to be last man on the ball.
No. I wanted to respond to it.
Yeah, sure.
The AFP was always against us. I'm struggling to against. Stayaways, it was against us. Ikwela, it was against.
For sure.
Train violence. Nengoye, they killed, many of our students. Students who came from here, Soweto, to the homelands, who were called that they were bad influences.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I don't recognize these guys.
No.
Because they group themselves according to clans.
Clans, yeah.
That's why I say, I don't belong to these factions, because if you're a Zulu, it means you must agree that Mrs. Zulu is your king, and I cannot have a king like Mrs. Zulu. Come on, I'm intelligent enough. Even Zwelitin, what is the struggle? During apartheid colonialism, nobody knows. He's never contributed anything. And I was surprised the other time at the lot when he was accused of xenophobia thing. He did not do that, during apartheid, even during Phoenix. Mangasutu Tennis, what I meant yesterday. Mr. Zulu, we like to thank all the communities of Phoenix.
After Phoenix,
even Ramaphosa thank them. They say people who died there, they're more than 200,000. That's why sometimes the people who call themselves Zulus, they surprise me, because they never rise against anything, against, the system of the day, beside black on black. Yeah, I might take saying they're very good. I wonder if the people who killed other people in Phoenix were Basuto, they'll be fighting even to this day, but because it's another race. So that's where we find ourselves. But all I can say, Uguti, South Africans, they were liberated by people internally, people in the townships. The very same people who are excluded today, the people who are governing us are people who were in the Bantu stand, people who were in exile, running away. They're in government today, people who contributed nothing. That's why you find today a guy who's never seen a train, until he was 40 years old, when he came to the big cities like Mbalula. He's made a minister of transport. He's never seen, a bus, because where he comes from, you must ride on a horse for 200 kilometers before you see a train. And then you make him a minister. He doesn't understand what is a pothole. So all these guys, to me, they are nincompoops. You can see even the way they dress. They wear leopard skin, Lacoste from top to bottom. They can't even break it. That was his Uganda. So that's why most of them, they're always accused of sexual violence. I've asked them in one of their groupings, they kicked me out. I said, how do these guys always find themselves, because his Uganda, some we were told, they are twin pin, you know, because they don't know it after sekas, you know. Tinekas in fact motor mntwana grade yathi baby kunjani mfethu uphuza mntana athi hayi ngihamba nomuntu uthi no sharp ulanda uBeyonce ukheli komana maqhomela ulanda uBeyonce marathi ukhela yo uhamba noBeyonce iyabuya so uzona zona that do you know who I am that's why bathi ziyaripa yabo thina mfethu siyarelease khona la ushade malathi out nokugrade ngilanda uRihanna yabo so these guys South Africans should not be surprised when we are governed the way we are governed and right now these guys like Jacob Zuma they are claiming that they are liberating a black child. They are taking us from the Western imperialism to the Eastern imperialism. China is far worse because these guys, they come with finished product, they come with labor, they just want to exploit us. There's nothing that they can do for us. They don't understand people who are going to Kwazam Konto. You know, we must be for self-determination. Gaddafi was closer to that. You have our African bank, however our African currency, of which we are not. So we are here, we are because of these guys, they are traitors, and South Africans, this thing of voter, if voting gave you power, they would not have allowed you to vote. You vote, you know, you replace one puppet, the system is a problem, the Codesa system, the constitution of the day. No matter even if you call Jesus to be the president, to change nothing because he's indebted to the multinationals, to these globalist companies. So the only thing that can help is way, but one petty, must when skip is blue, red, yellow, one petty.
Please do for us, please do for us. That's one leg.
Wow.
There's this one that I forgot to mention.
Yes, please go on.
The economic fake fighters, the one who's managing the revolution.
All right.
And the youth, they believe in this guy. You know, he's a notice of note, the King Jong-un of the Minions. You know, we need, you know, to take the struggle on our own and lead ourselves, you know. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on there.
Yeah, no, indeed. There is much here that is unresolved. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? There is much too much. We certainly need other more structured sessions to follow upon these ones, to follow the lead, all the loose ends that came up from this conversation here. There is much here. I have to thank my fellow co-panelists.
Thank you.
And our sponsor here, Remashia. Thank you very much.
Do you know Mugabe said, so really, he called Indiwezulu. I saw you hosting Indiwezulu. She said she's a street woman. She said, don't tell me about that street woman. Indiwezulu, no, that's his opinion. She could do nothing about it. And I heard your interview. Anyway, let me see.